countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, it is now time for more of the last comic shop.
That's right, we are dusting off the long boxes and diving in to get all the newbies caught up on everything they need to know about comic books.
And we're keeping the lights on for the oldies that like to hear about the history of comic books by some of their favorite creators. Hey, idea this week. I know normally we do that whole thing where we pick a book, read a book, and rate a book, similar to a Mate Style per system. But this week, why don't we change it up?
Oh, what do you have in mind?
Well, instead of me reading something, why don't we just publish those interviews we did from the Pittsburgh Three Rivers Comic-Con a few weeks back?
Hold on. Is this just another excuse for you not to do work this week?
No. Speaking of long boxes, I've been too busy reorganizing my long boxes to actually read anything this week. Because sometimes you got to hit the pause button and do some maintenance. But you know what's great while you're organizing your long boxes? Creator interviews, which we've already done, so I don't have to do this week. So yeah, let's do that.
All right. Well, you're right. We still have these interviews that we never got to. A couple weeks ago, we did do an episode like this. It was very well received. A lot of people enjoyed us talking with Ron Friends and Matt Horak and Howard Chaykin. So yeah, let's go ahead and get some of those other interviews that we got from Three Rivers Con here in Pittsburgh way back at the beginning of the summer. So first up, I think we've got some interviews from Patrick Olliffe. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yes. Olliffe like olive, but with F sounds.
Ah, yes. And Brett Breeding. So yeah, Death of Superman and all that. So let's go ahead and get to those interviews now.
Hey, this is Chad Smith from The Last Comic Shop here at the Three Rivers Comic-Con here with Patrick Olliffe. Thanks for coming on the show.
Sure.
So I am familiar with your work primarily through the Untold Tales of Spider-Man and your work on Spider-Girl and even some of the Scooby Unleashed or Scooby Apocalypse, which was way out there.
Oh yeah, it was. I love that series, and it's amazing how during the course of the show here, I have Spider-Man stuff in front of me and pin-ups, everything. Scooby Apocalypse gets more notice than almost anything else. People walk by, Scooby Apocalypse. Yeah, it's a draw, and it was a fun series.
I can only imagine what it's like Scooby-Doo crossed with The Walking Dead for the folks that aren't familiar with it.
Yep.
And
a perfect idea.
So there you go. So how did you get involved with something like that?
With Scooby?
Yeah.
Well, basically, I had just completed another project and was looking for some work, and I contacted the editor at DC who I've worked with in the past, and they said, well, hey, we need a couple of issues of Scooby Apocalypse, we need some fill-ins.
Okay.
I said, sure, that sounds like fun. It sounds like a really fun book. I did a couple of the issues, and they contacted me and said, we love what you're doing, could you come on full-time? And I said, absolutely. So that's just kind of how it worked.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, let's get into the Spider-Man stuff,
Yep.
because I love Spider-Man stuff, and so you and Kurt Busiek were able to go back with the Untold Tales of Spider-Man and meticulously fit in stories in the Spider-Man history.
Correct.
What was that like? What was that process like? Like, how careful did you have to be? And
So, from my standpoint, it was a little bit easier because I basically had to kind of coordinate the visuals of it. So
okay.
Where everybody, what they looked like, and how, costume detail and all that kind of thing. Kurt was really the mastermind in the fitting in part.
Okay.
He was the one that did all the background work to try to make sure that each story hit in the right spot in the continuity.
He had those crazy person pin maps with the strings.
Yeah, exactly, with the yarn and everything, all in his basement, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So this was perfect, and so he did all the heavy lifting.
Okay.
And then for me, it was just more of a visual thing, making sure the characters looked pretty similar, and the costume and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it wasn't just the traditional Spidey characters, although they did come into play a lot.
They did.
But there were a lot of characters. Did you have a hand in co-creating some of those?
Oh, sure. I mean, there would be, if Commanda or some of the other ones, those were the characters that Kurt, would come up with, and then I would develop the look from that. So I would get a description, and then I would come up with the look for the character.
Nice.
Scorcher being my favorite.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Now, he's shown up in some modern books, hasn't he?
I don't know. He might have. I've heard some rumors, but I'm not sure.
You don't keep up with that kind of stuff?
Well, nobody, somebody tells me these things. I don't know if they're accurate or not. So,
There
I think he should be in every story myself.
That's awesome.
That's right.
And then I'm seeing your Spider-Girl work over there. That was another great story. We were just talking with Ron Friends a little bit ago. That's some guy. Just some guy that's here. As Ron Friends is standing a foot away, ready to kick me again.
Hovering in the background.
No. But no, Spider-Girl, what was it like working on that series? It was so popular with the fans.
Right, it was. And I think that was the really the gratifying thing about Spider-Girl was not only was it a great character and I was, privileged to work on it. I mean, Tom DeFalco and Ron Friends created the character. What If 105 started the whole thing.
Right.
And I was very fortunate to come on board. And that was one of the great things about the book. It was that the fans really gravitated to her as a character, and they never really left. I mean,
Right.
That was the thing about the book, is that we were always at the edge of cancellation because we were always assuming that the sales would drop, as most projects do.
Right.
And everything has a shelf life, and we would be ending at this issue or this issue, and it never happened. The sales just leveled up and they stayed there. The fans were so loyal. They came back month after month after month.
Well, the character was so accessible.
I think so.
And you guys got to play within the Spidey mythos. And,
Right.
was there a lot of editorial intermingling? Or were you guys free to do what you wanted?
I think it was really DeFalco's world. I mean, and I think and Ron did a lot of developing a lot of characters as well. So really, that was the great thing about Spider-Girl, which then became part of the MCU universe.
Right.
Is that we were really left alone to do what we wanted to do, and which was perfect because we got a chance, like you said, play around with some of the Spider-Man mythos, but then develop our own characters, our own path.
Right.
Which was perfect.
And you guys were just consistently putting out great books month after month after month, and that's really hard to do.
And I think that was a big thing too. And I think that there was during that era, there were a lot of people that were jump on a book. This is great. 3 months later, disappears. I mean, we wanted to really make sure that we were there every month, churning out, book after book, so that the audience knew we were going to be there every month. They knew they were going to get a story every month,
right?
And they could then follow along as the story grew organically.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. Also coming out in omnibus. I don't know if it's out yet or if it's coming out soon.
I don't know if it's out yet. I'm not sure.
But it's in the. I've seen the covers and the solicits and everything else. So I'm hoping that does well too.
Yeah, very
maybe
much
strike a resurgence.
Oh yeah, I mean the fact that there's still so many Spider-Girl fans out there is really gratifying. Really.
So yeah, that and Untold Tales too. I think.
It's been nice. I mean, Untold Tales of Spider-Man was 25 years ago now or something like that, and I still get people signing books, Untold Tales of Spider-Man copies.
There you go.
Yeah, it's been great.
So let's fast forward a little bit today. What are some projects you're working on currently? Where can people find you?
So right now I'm working on a project called Edgeworld.
Okay.
That's coming out from Comixology Originals. So our first arc was out a little while ago. We have another arc that will be coming out. Our second arc will be coming out in a few months, I think. And the trade for the first arc will be coming out through Dark Horse in August.
Okay.
So right now, Edgeworld, Comixology Originals, that's where you can find it.
There you go. Very cool. And look for that from Dark Horse here pretty soon as well?
Yep, absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, sir. We hope you have a great show, and thanks for all the fun stories.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.
All right, take care. Hi, this is Chad with The Last Comic Shop, and we are here at Three Rivers Comic Con with Brett Breeding. Mr. Breeding, sir, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
Now, your career, you have touched on so many impactful moments in superheroics, whether it's the black costume Spider-Man where you were there, or whether it was Death of Superman, showing his identity to Lois Lane. What are some of your favorite moments that you've been able to be a part of in the comic industry?
Well, you just mentioned a couple of them. The Death of Superman certainly has followed me for the last 30 years and it still has an impact on my life. I mean, it's obviously what I'm most remembered for. But I started out early in my career and as a background person for Bob Layton, working on his first run with David Michelini of Iron Man.
Okay, a classic run.
So that
Demon in the Bottle and whatnot?
Well, I came on after Demon in a Bottle. I started around issue 133.
Okay.
But the highlight of that for me was issue 150 when we did the story, or they did the story with Dr. Doom. So Dr. Doom meeting Iron Man, for the first time, having that kind of one-to-one.
And they would continue those every 100 issues or so. They check back in.
They did a nice job with that. It was a lot of fun to work on, and a nice way to start my foray into comics. Shortly after that, I started working on my own, and I got to do things like first West Coast Avengers series and the first Hawkeye miniseries. I worked on the first series of Thundercats, the Gene DeWolf storyline, and the Spider-Man, Peter Parker.
There you go with Peter David.
So yeah, it was one of his first writing assignments, and so there's a lot of key moments that at the time you didn't know were key moments. It was just an assignment.
Right.
But now when I go to shows, it's amazing just in the last couple of years how many Thundercats books people bring to sign. Like, I was surprised anybody remembered it, but not only do they remember it, it's very popular.
Right.
Even the Thor lifting the hammer was,
Captain America.
Captain America being Steve Rogers, he wasn't Captain America at the time, was my idea. So
no way.
I gave that idea to Ron when we were working on the story, and it was like we were having this battle, and Thor was separated from the hammer, and I said, of all the characters in the Marvel Universe, wouldn't you think the one that is worthy is Steve Rogers? And he thought it was a great idea and bounced it off of Tom. Tom liked the idea, so they worked it into the story. I still think it was a great idea. It was a really fun issue to work on, and who knew, 30 years later it would pop up in the biggest movie of, one of the biggest movies of all time.
It was the #1 movie of all time, and that was the signature moment.
Yeah, well, everybody in the theater I was in just went nuts, so, and I've heard that a lot. So, at the time you're doing these things, you don't know what they're going to be down the road. It does seem like I touched quite a number of keystone moments in those characters, so that's a lot of fun to look back on.
Heck yeah, and you have worked with so many great creators, whether it's the George Perez or Ron Frenz, or even doing your own work. Did you have a favorite that you like to work with and embellish over? Or?
Well, Ron is probably consistently the person I have worked on off and on throughout my career, and I do it because I enjoy working with him and I enjoy the work. So he's easy to collaborate with and partner with on a book. He gives you a lot of freedom and a lot of input and a lot of support. But the work itself is fantastic, and we have very similar influences, so it's a collaboration that comes easy. I sit down and I know what to do with his stuff inherently. I know what he's going for when he puts lines down. I try to not just follow what's there, but try to give him what he expects. And
right.
It's been a good
the moves.
I sought out early in my career wanting to work with George Perez, and that has always been a fun thing. When I finally did get to do some work with him on different points in my career.
Yeah, I always remember that great homage Superman cover you guys did, whenever they came back to Action Comics.
Well, he did the covers. That's one thing. Never got to work on the covers with George. George always did his own covers. And on that Action Comics, when he came back, one of the reasons I was hired was because I primarily spent my career as a finish inker.
Right.
So finish inkers work over breakdowns generally. Nowadays, it's pretty much, editors don't even know what finishing is, a lot of them. Because pencilers pencil so tight, basically inkers really are just tracing the lines at this point. Back in the day, a lot of penciling was done as breakdowns so that the penciler could generate more work, and you needed finish artists who could come in and finish the drawing to some degree. With George, he did not even want to do breakdowns. He just did like thumbnail type layouts.
Okay.
I believe they were blown up on the boards initially. At one point when Kerry Gamble came on, he did that step. But so I was tasked with finishing the pencils and then inking.
Wow.
So it was kind of a daunting thing because, there's examples here, and you won't be able to see this obviously on the podcast, but I keep this in my portfolio because people don't necessarily know what inking is. So this is what George gave me, and this is what I had to turn it into.
Yeah, the
So-
level of detail that you add in there, like,
Yeah, and then you have to put things that aren't there, complete the drawing. And this is actually, you'd find tighter faces, but then a lot of times it would be just little balloon heads with the eye. I mean,
Right.
I could still see the George in it, but there was nothing more than just the basic shapes.
and even just looking at
So-
all the technology you had to imbue in there, and that
So
giant robot.
It was a lot of work, but it was a very rewarding, and it was fun working with George. I loved working with Kerry Gamble. I'm working again with Dan Jurgens. That's been a comfortable partnership. The list goes on. It'd probably be easier to list the people I didn't enjoy working on.
If you want to spill some tea, go ahead.
No, there are fewer of them. I've been very fortunate to, get partnered with people who I really like. And, just because I like their work doesn't mean, I think we were a good fit. I mean, I worked with Tom Grummett on Man of Tomorrow for 10 issues. And I love Tom's stuff. I'm a huge fan of his work.
Right?
But I just don't think I'm a natural fit for him the way somebody like Doug Hazelwood or Carl Peace is.
Okay, yeah.
So I hope I didn't change his work to, that he didn't care for what I was doing, because there was definitely the blend that I say like I have with Ron.
Right.
Or
What?
even with Dan to some degree.
I don't think they could ever fault you for your work ethic, as the pages you're putting out are fantastic. And it is finding that right blend. But I do want to ask, just because you've been a part of so many moments, going back to that death of Superman, that, I was 10 or 11 years old at the time, and that was the biggest thing. It was on the news. What was that like as a creator? Like, did you have people knocking on your door, sticking cameras in your face, or...
Death of Superman, everybody now seems to think they know what happened. Even back then, when it happened, it was planned, and, it's just like, it was such a fluke that we stumbled into. People don't realize Superman didn't sell back then. He was in cancellation numbers. And, of course, can't cancel Superman. He's the company's flagship title. So they pretty much left us all alone and let Mike Carlin just do what he wanted with the creators he had. And he was lucky to get some really darn good creators working for him. I mean, Jerry Ordway and
he's
Terry Gamble was
fantastic,
great,
and
Roger Stern, and George Perez, and then he added to that with people like Jurgens and Bob McLeod came in, and Louise and John Bogdan. I mean, he just had some really talented people to work with,
And that whole
and we
team
were
atmosphere.
left alone. Carlin created that with the summits, where he would include the inkers and the colorists, which was unheard of before. So all of us would be pulled together and were allowed to contribute ideas. Basically, that issue 75 was originally plotted in our story meetings to be the wedding issue. And what happened was, at almost the last minute, that had to be changed because the Lois and Clark TV show.
Yeah, and a lot of the run, you guys did the revealing the identity to Lois, and I think the TV show, was that a part of that as well?
It kind of started off, we were doing a lot of story arcs, but they would never give us trade paperbacks because Superman didn't sell. They're not going to sell. So we had the Red Kryptonite saga, we had the Time After Time saga. I mean, we had all these nice story arcs that were perfect for, and have since been compiled. But it was growing numbers, and people, we were creating a solid fan base. And then, we had the proposal to Lois, and that had a blip that got media attention.
Right.
Little blip. And then, a little while later, we had the reveal of his identity to Lois. Again, another blip in the media, So we were doing things that were not only good and being received well by fandom, but also the media, critics and stuff were seeing the stuff. But we still weren't doing X-Men numbers.
Right.
And
but
so
you were bringing people into comic shops, though.
Superman was a good product. It was solid in every way. And they when they called us in for the meeting and we had to come up with an idea, it was a joke at the time, but Jerry Ordway or someone else would often say, when we were stuck for ideas, let's just kill him. In this particular meeting, Jurgens showed up with an idea for wanting a villain that could go toe-to-toe with Superman in a physical way. instead of mental powers or magic.
Right.
And Jerry made that same joke again when we were stuck, and somehow that conflated into, well, why don't we have this guy Dan? What's great? Kill him. And then Carlin was like, okay, then what? So then it snowballed, and it was like, well, then we could do the effect of Funeral for a Friend. It's not just a one-issue thing, but will they even let us do it? And ultimately they did, and we just figured people would buy it, and hopefully they would enjoy it.
Right.
The day it came out, no one knew. I was on CNN that morning because the comic shop I was scheduled to go in for a signing was contacted. And the craziness that day was like, it was like being a Beatle.
Oh, I can only imagine.
I was at a mall in Philadelphia, which at the time was like one of the largest malls in the country, and this comic shop was right on the food court. And people couldn't eat because the entire food court was shoulder to shoulder with people wanting to get comics.
Oh, yeah.
And all four major news organizations, ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox were all there. And the Fox guy in particular, I know, he kept telling me how much he knew Paul Levitz. So this was all a plan, and you're gonna bring him back. And I'm like, Paul Levitz had nothing to do with this. I was in the story meetings. Right now, we're ceasing publication until we figure out what to do next. Which was true because it was discussed quite seriously at the time that maybe this is a point where we bring Superman back at some point as someone different or something different.
Okay.
And start over because what we had wasn't selling. Maybe people would be interested in a total revamp.
Was the genesis there for the 4 Supermen?
No.
The Superboy Steel, that sort of thing?
That wasn't there yet.
Okay.
So the next step was Funeral for a Friend, which became a lot more viable, made a lot more sense at that point because we had at that point seen the reaction in the real world.
It was the biggest thing. The biggest thing.
So in the real world, people were, missing Superman, and that was the story in the comics. So it really was a reflection of what was really going on. And through that, it was like, we're going to have to bring him back. I think people care now.
Yeah, you see how much a fictional character matters to people.
So we should probably but how are we going to do it? So that was the next meeting.
Okay.
And when we all got together, it was like, well, what should we do? And it's like, Dan said, well, I got this character. I think this would be cool. And Louise and Bob said, well, we were thinking about this guy. And Roger had his idea for the Eradicator. And Mike Carlin was just like, why don't we just do them all? Well, each of you can do your version, and we'll figure out what we do, where we go later.
If one is good, 4 is better.
So, it's Monday morning quarterbacking is always easy. Everybody looks back and goes, oh, they planned this, or they know, or it was a plan. We were going step by step and making it up as we went.
That's so incredible to me, just because of the way the triangle system worked and how many people had to be involved with each title. And the excitement
Mike Carlin doesn't
palpable.
get enough credit because he held everybody together, and he was the glue that kept it all running. He the oil that kept the machine, running, hopefully smoothly. Probably not all the time, but yeah, I mean, but we had a creative team that we liked each other. We traveled to these things a lot and did social things a lot together on these trips. So, we bonded as a unit, and we all liked each other, respected each other's work, and it was just a great bunch of people. So we felt like a team, and that's not to say there weren't conflicts and people wanting to do different stuff.
Creative people have creative ideas.
But there wasn't any kind of animosity or it's, got to be my way or everybody was, some more so than others were team players. Okay. But we all managed to work as a team on this stuff, again, led by Mike Carlin. And it worked. It just, and we all had, I think, a vision, if not a similar vision of the characters, a similar goal of doing the best thing for the characters. Right. And so everyone was receptive to other people's ideas and trying to, mash it all together. And so it was kind of like a stew, Everybody threw a little something in, and
you get the best work that way sometimes.
Yeah, it was. I don't think we'll ever see that kind of books created that way again in comics. It was just very unique, and it's what made those titles what they were.
Absolutely super. Well, I have one last question because we've taken up a generous portion of your time here. You have been part of so many of these different super important moments in the culture. But for you personally, do you have a personal work that stands out that you're like, if I want to show somebody the best of Brett Breeding, this is the issue that I hand them, or this is the trade,
Well,
this is the story?
I mean, I'm proud of what we did on Death Superman. I'm proud of Superman 75. I did the inking a little differently, basically because of where comics were at the time. I did some things I wouldn't normally do, but, with all splash pages and stuff, you get to open up. So it was an opportunity to try to do your best work. I'm proud of the work I did with Ron on our run of Thor, even though it wasn't as long as I would have liked. Avengers Next was a book we did for a line of comics called MC2.
Yeah, the
at Marvel.
M2, yeah.
And I don't know what it was about that work and Ron, but just things really flowed well. And I look back at that as some of my favorite work. I'm kind of always changing what I'm doing and to the artist or
Right,
playing with my style. And
a
at
certain
that
amount
point,
of your job where you have to be adaptable.
yeah, and sometimes it's just changing the tools. And, some people don't realize this, but, if you ink a job with a brush or you ink a job with a pen, and depending on what pen, it can all have a different feeling. It can still be the same style, but, those of us that do it can recognize, oh, that guy was doing this with a brush, and that guy was, so when I would change tools, my work would change a little bit. I was doing more pen work on A-Next stuff, but I was just really clicking with Ron on that stuff. I loved it. Avengers is what got me into comics. John Buscema and Tom Palmer's run in the 60s. I always loved those characters. So to do the next generation of those characters with Ron, who is influenced by John to begin with,
Right.
It was like, wow, I am just loving this on every level. So, but a lot of people don't know what that is. It was obscure stuff that didn't last that long.
There's a Spider-Girl, I think, is the remnant from that a lot of people still...
Yeah. Now, a lot of people will ask about, Amazing 52, 252, because of the black costume. And, it's one of those things that it's a place in history, but I'm not really proud of my work in that. I was kind of still new in comics. First time I got to work with Ron, he was also new. We didn't, know each other's stuff that well. And I think both of us will admit we weren't doing our best work on it. I was not allowed to do the backgrounds at the time because of the editor. So it was a very limiting experience. And I look back at it now and I go, it's a shame because as important as this book is, I wish I took more pride in it.
But it's a stepping stone.
A lot of the
you
Superman
need all those
stuff,
moments.
I love the stuff I did with Kerry Gamble on Superman. He is still one of my favorite Superman artists.
Oh, nice.
So looking back at that stuff, because I was on Superman for 10 years, that earlier stuff they did, there's a lot in there that I still look at and I go, wow, this was nice.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great show.
Yeah, I think that was more than 10 minutes.
It was. My apologies.
I talk too much. I know.
I was just having fun listening to the story, sir. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Have a great day.
Yeah, I remember Death of Superman. I kind of liked it, but I really liked was the return of Superman when you had the four Supermans, the four Supermans.
Did I ever ask you, J.A., what was your favorite? Who was your favorite of the ones that they came back with?
The robot Superman, I think.
Oh,
because he had half a face, and he kind of looked. It was kind of like DC's Borg.
There you go. Not the Eradicator. He was the guy with the sunglasses.
He was my favorite. Last son of Krypton. Yeah.
The best part about that whole thing, that I learned from that interview, that was not like a well thought out plan. They're just doing this stuff as they go. Like, they killed Superman and they're like, yeah, we'll figure it out.
What I love is they killed Superman. I was like, hey, and then they come in the next Monday. Now what?
All right. Well, we've got some more interviews right after this commercial break. We've got a wonderful one with Rick Leonardi as well as the fantastic inker Wayne Faucher. So stay tuned for more Last Comic Shop and these great interviews right after these commercial breaks.
Hazel always knew there was something special about her cat Mooney, but she's still shocked when Mooney opens his mouth to tell her he's just had a vision. An ancient evil has awoken after centuries of sleep, and only one man can stop it, the legendary warrior Beowulf. Unfortunately, it's been over 1,000 years since he slayed a dragon, and he's been reincarnated as this guy. His name is Victor, and he's more unemployed millennial slacker than mighty warrior. Go to monarchpublishing.net for a free sample comic.
Hey everyone, Brian Thomas here from the former The Batman vs. James Bond show and the upcoming The Night Cave show. Do you like noir, black and white gritty murder mysteries? Do you like crime stories or even pulp comics? Then you're gonna love Nick Palahniuk's debut graphic novel entitled The Greenway. It's 1968, and Butch Schultz, a black market merchant, finds that his friend has been murdered in a mansion in St. Paul. Now he is out looking for who did it, while the city's best detectives are on the case. Nick's graphic novel is already getting rave reviews, let me tell you. Zero Supervision Comics podcast says, a dark, intriguing story that makes you want to know more. The Glenn Thinks Stuff podcast says, it's explosive, captivating, and alluring. And actor Kyle Hester from The Chair, Zombie with a Shotgun, and Preacher 6 says, can't wait for this book. You gotta get on this. Order your copy today at Indie Planet, A New World of Comics. That's www.indieplanet.com. Hard copies and digital copies are available, and now digital copies are only $5. That's where I said it, just $5. So make sure you order yours today.
All right, so we're here at the Three Rivers Con with Wayne Faucher. Wayne, we've talked to you in the past, and it's always been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. But you know, in the last comic shop that we'd like to promote people getting into comic books. And a lot of times we talk about the artists, and a lot of times people focus on the pencilers. But you are an inker by trade. And over the 30 years of inking comic books, you've inked a lot of people. So how did you get into inking? Like, where did your passion for inking come about from?
When I was a kid, I used to go to shows here and there, some in New York City. And I was at a show once there, and one of my big guys was Gil Kane. I loved Gil Kane, and I had a number of his pages. I still have them. And so I was looking for Gil Kane pages, and I found a page from What If #3. And in fact, this dealer had a bunch of them. And I was like looking through them, and I thought, I know this is Gil Kane, but there was something different about it. So I bought one, and I brought it home. And I was looking at it, and I was comparing it to the Sonat inks and the other inks that I had over Kane, and I realized that it was the inker, and it was Klaus Janson who had inked What If #3, and I had an epiphany. I realized what an inker can do for a penciler or to a penciler, and I just loved it. I thought, oh my God, this is what an inker can do. This is possible. And so, I mean, I didn't. It wasn't then that I thought about inking, but it was then that I really became aware of inking. I really never thought about it before that, because I was a dumb kid, you know. I didn't know.
Are there any other inkers that, as you got through the industry, you were like, oh, that person's work was really good, other than Klaus?
Oh, I mean, you know, I love Klaus. Dick Giordano, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, created modern inking. I had a chance to ink over his pencils once, and it was a nerve-wracking experience, because I knew this. If anybody knew inking, it was Dick Giordano.
Right.
So I inked him over. It was a DC book, Birds of Prey, Wolves. It was called.
Okay.
And it got back to me later that he really liked what I had done. I thought it was a train wreck.
That's a heck of a compliment, though, to get praise from Giordano.
His assistant came up to me at a con and he said, you know, did you ink this book? And I said, yeah. He said, Dick really loved it. And I was like, oh my God, you know. So that, it was kind of nice to hear, because, like, as I said, I thought I kind of destroyed it, but he was okay with it, apparently. I have to apologize for my voice. I've been hollering for like the last day and a half.
Oh, that's okay. Another question I have is, when you get pencils from various people, is it all kinds? Like, are they like partly finished, fully finished? Like it. I guess that's the question. Like, when you get the work, like, how much embellishing do you need to do?
It depends on the penciler. It depends totally on the penciler. There are some guys like a Mike McCone or a Don Kramer, or, you know, somebody like that, where you could just like trace it essentially. I mean, that's the old joke. But for guys like that, you could trace it. There's a little bit of stuff here and there, textures and whatnot, that you can add for those kind of guys. And then there are other guys where it's just really loose. I mean, I just inked Mark Bagley, and not the entire page, but certain areas were super loose, and that allows you for a little more interpretation. And I mean, it demands some interpretation.
Right.
You have to answer some questions. I mean, I'm not.
You get that creative freedom and creative responsibility to fill that out.
Yeah, I mean, Mark's tighter than a lot. And then I think guys like in a totally different direction that are so loose that you can't even tell what you're doing. But I'm not going to name them.
Right, no. But do you enjoy the challenge of that when you get things that are a little bit loose and you have that creative freedom to kind of put your stamp on it a little bit more?
You know, I mean, I inked a guy named Alberto Ponticelli on Frankenstein Agent of Shade, and I did that for a while. And it was some of the most fun I ever had because I could do like looser inks.
Okay.
His stuff was all there, but it really called for something a little looser, a little sketchier, and I really enjoyed that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to a point you enjoy it, and then it gets to a point where you're like, what the hell am I drawing this for?
Well, one of the other questions, last question I have for you, Wayne, is I always ask this. What was the fastest turnaround time on an inking job that you ever had?
I probably shouldn't confess this. Chris Pacello was doing a Emma Frost book, and it was beautiful. I mean, all his stuff is beautiful. It doesn't matter how fast it goes, but he tends to call in a lot of inkers, and I happen to be on his wrecking crew of inkers. And so I was scheduled to do certain pages, and I did them. And then he's the only penciler that has my phone number, and he
on speed dial.
Yeah, I mean, I don't give that out, but to him I did, and he texted me and he said, "Can you handle another page?" And I was like, "Oh God, sure. I mean, I can handle a Chris Pacello page anytime." And I said, "How fast do you need it?" He said, 1 hour.
Wow!
And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, let me see it. I'm not going to make any promises till I see it." So he emailed it to me, and I looked at it, and I said, "Okay, man, you know, it's at 10:30 in the morning now. You'll have it by 11:30." So I did it. I inked it in an hour. It was a pretty simple page. It came out fine. I spotted all the blacks in Photoshop. I didn't try to paint them in that amount of time.
Right.
And I turned it in an hour later. And as God is my witness, he was coloring it himself. A half an hour after I inked it, it was colored too.
Wow!
So apparently he had some miscommunication with the guy that was supposed to ink it, and it hadn't happened. So he just grabbed me.
Right.
Which is, like I said, it was fine. If nothing else, I'm fast, apparently. So
it was just that rush of creativity on all ends.
Oh my God.
He's coming into the page.
Sometimes that 11th hour stuff will just, but it gives you a great story.
I still have the page, too.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Wayne, your work is just always so great, whether you're working with somebody like a Bocciolo or an Umberto Ramos or Chris Bautista. You always seem to manage to respect and enhance the styles. It's great having a chance to talk to you today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Have a great rest of your show, Wayne.
If I don't lose my voice, totally, yeah.
And thank you so much for being on The Last Comic Shop.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Hey, we are here at the Three Rivers Con with Rick Leonardi, that wonderful artist that has done so much great work over the past 30 years of being in the business, maybe 30 years plus even almost. But
Probably 40.
Wow! Really quickly, that's where I want to start, Rick, is again, we like to talk to folks and see, how they got started in the industry, what were their influences when it came to, did you read comic books when you were a younger man?
Yes. My first comic book that I ever read was Star Spangled War Stories 139. It was an episode of Enemy Ace.
Okay.
So the answer to the question, who's the first comic book penciler I was ever aware of? The answer is Joe Kubert.
Okay.
Bad place to start.
No, it isn't. Not at all.
It's a little raggedy getting into the series. I find now, going back and looking at all the reprints.
Right.
But by 139, he was smoking. It was gorgeous art. Still is. well worth anybody looking it up.
So did you follow Joe when you were younger? Like, were you one of those people that found because you liked his art? Like,
I mean, I was young enough not to really have kind of glommed on the whole idea of like superstar pencilers.
Okay.
And in fact, the whole idea of a superstar penciler really hadn't been created yet. We're still waiting for Jim Steranko to show up.
Right.
But and I would argue that the two of them really created the whole idea of a name creator that's worth following, whose product is distinguishable from everybody else's.
Right.
I don't want to make you feel bad, but I discovered your work as a young man too, like 9, 10 years old. And your style always stood out. I always knew when I had a Rick Leonardi book, even if I didn't know your name, like you could tell.
Yeah.
Oh, that's that guy from the X-Men, or that's that guy from that Daredevil issue.
Which is an interesting thing to hear, because I don't really think I have a style per se. I think what I do is, and this is a function of the era that I came up in and the training that I got from editors.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the prime directive is to tell the story. You have to tell the story.
Okay.
Everything is subservient to making things as clear as possible for the reader who doesn't have the benefit of what the writer has put down in terms of plot. Or the writer's got his hot flash of inspiration and everything is clear to him, but the reader is lost.
Okay.
Well, it goes without saying. Your storytelling chops are undeniable. I mean, after 42 years. And one of the personal highlights for me, too, was your Spider-Man 2099 stuff, where that was the first time, because I'd missed out, I think, on Cloak and Dagger.
Oh.
But you were the regular on the book, and I got Leonardi art month in and month out.
Well,
what was that experience like?
Working with Peter David.
Working with Peter David. Peter, I get this question sometimes from what's it like working with various writers? Tell us about how to distinguish one writer from another.
Right.
Kind of thing. Some things are kind of obvious. Chris Claremont was so wholly invested in the X-Men properties. I mean, he's subsumed his actual real life into the writing part of his life and kind of vanished in a way as a personality into the X-Men. So that when you got scripts from him, they were like volumes. It was just all his backstory, and you knew exactly why everything was happening, and it was like, do I really need all this? It's cool, but the age would be a kitchen sink exercise. Do you really want all of this? Okay, but it was great training. Contrast that to Chuck Dixon, for example, who's maybe because he's got snake bit by pencilers in the past, asking too many questions, only tells you exactly what you need to know and nothing else.
Okay.
He doesn't want you, kibitzing and looking over his shoulder. So, what if we did sharp? So that's Chuck. And then you got guys like Bill Mantlo, who he would start by turning on the TV or reading the newspaper or getting outraged at something that he'd seen, and that would be the plot. And you had to sign on to his agenda and go. And 9 times out of 10, that was easy to do because it was like I was outraged.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the questions I did have for you, is working with Bill, because unfortunately, what happened with Bill, but he hasn't been able to give interviews and things like that. So that was really what I wanted to ask was, when you were kind of working on Cloak and Dagger with Bill, did he come with that agenda of like, we want to talk about, I don't know, teenage runaways or things like that? Like he was very passionate about that.
At some point there, he was putting himself through law school, and I think he became, as a sideline, he became public defender.
Okay.
I mean, he was a total hippie in that regard. One of the first books I ever drew was a Spider-Man issue that was all about gun control, and it's like, what's changed? Tell me what's changed.
Yeah.
So that's Bill.
A lot of those issues that were of the time ended up being more timeless than we hoped.
Yeah, exactly.
But back to Peter David?
So Peter David's thing is he will drag a story 3 or 4 pages out of its way to tell a joke.
And why not?
And it's like, okay, I'm with you. But that's Peter David. I mean, he's really kind of full of himself, and if you're into it, great. But it's all about dialogue. His stage, should I say this? His stagecraft is terrific. Left, right, foreground, background. It doesn't matter. Just give me space for balloons.
I imagine that gives you a lot of creative freedom then.
Right,
on those books.
exactly.
Yeah, that's why I ended up with such a great finished product.
That's the way to look at it.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time with us today, Rick, and gracing us with some of these stories of some of the folks that you've worked with over the years. Are you working on anything currently, or?
I just wrapped a graphic novel, 160 pages.
Wow.
Yeah, it's coming out. It's probably going to come out next February.
Okay.
We were hoping to have it out in time to kind of match up with the release of Top Gun 2 because it's a military story and it's got F-14s in it.
Okay.
But we were too slow. So it's coming out from the U.S. Naval Institute Press. They have a graphic novel imprint, sub-imprint, called Dead Reckoning.
Okay.
And they're putting it out.
So we still have DVD release, Blu-ray release time.
That's right.
That's true.
Hit that Top Gun market.
That's true. So yeah, it's a military story with a superhero element in it. I don't think I've ever read anything quite like it. So
Okay.
I'm kind of
Neat.
pleased with it.
Yeah, we'll have to check it out once it comes out. But thank you so much, Rick, for taking some time with us today and stopping by the Last Comic Shop.
All right.
Have a great show, sir.
You guys too.
So, Andrew, the fact that I made you read all that Spider-Man 2099 came in really handy with that interview there.
It did, I won't lie. I mean, it was good homework going into that interview with Rick. I really did enjoy talking with him. And I think the best part about it was Chad had found in like a dollar bin or something these wonderful Cloak and Dagger drawings that he did. And to get those ones signed, right? It was in a dollar bin, right, Chad?
No, it wasn't in a dollar bin. It was in the basement of a local Pittsburgh comic shop, and they were actually promotional prints for retailers. But I was able to pick up a pack. And they had these wonderful Cloak and Dagger images on there, and there was almost Spider-Man that we were able to get signed, and just some really great, beautiful Rick Leonardi stuff.
Chad wants to dispel the rumor that all he does is shop at dollar bins and Ollie's.
That's right. Sometimes I spend as much as $3 on comic books out of the long boxes.
Good gravy. Well, we hope that you don't spend a lot of money listening to The Last Comic Shop because we don't charge any for it. It's always free, and you can get those free podcasts and comic book reviews and recommendations by just going out to our website every single week, www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. It's a terrific place where you can find all of those episodes, past and present, and they are evergreen, so go back and listen to some great ones, from the past. If you missed having a comic book review this week, we got tons of them. And you can rate, review, and subscribe out there, as well as check out our link to YouTube, as well as check us out on social media. Where, Chad?
At Last Comic Shop on Twitter and Instagram, where you can find our weekly polls that Jay puts up. You could find our daily factoids. You could find what we're picking up at the comic shop. You could find Golden Age covers to tuck you in at night before you go to bed. All sorts of stuff is waiting for you on social media. And if you need those links, you can always find them back at the home base at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, where they can also find what else, J.A.?
Yeah, links to our merch store where you can get t-shirts and mugs and tote bags for all the comics you pick up in the dollar bin.
Or at Comic Cons. I mean, it's still Comic Con season. It will be Comic Con season all the way through, the end of this year. We're hoping to maybe get to New York Comic Con this year. So maybe we'll have some more interviews from there coming up on a future show.
But yeah, if you love comic books, you owe it to yourself. If you've never been, check out a Comic Con near you. It's a great experience. I know we had a great time at Three Rivers Con, and it really does show you that there's something for everybody out there. So, yeah, get out there, get traveling, check out those cons.
Yeah, and we hope that you check out The Last Comic Shop next week. Until then, I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson. I was joined by Chad Smith and Jay Scott. And we hope that you stay safe, stay cool, and remember, it's always nice talking with people. It really is, because it beats the alternative, which is just standing there in silence.
Sometimes I like the silence.
Do you?
Silence
I think
is
it's
nice.
awkward as hell.
Awkward and nice.
People just think you're like a creeper. Just, are you doing anything here? No, I just want to look at you.
That reminds me of when I was working in D.C. I always got the first train when I was interning. I always got the first train in the morning, and you see the same people because it's always the first train of the day. You see the same people every day. We never talk to each other, but you'd always stand in the same car. People are just creatures of habit. Oh, there's the guy who's going to construction because his boots are all, messy, but he's got brand new, beautifully laundered jeans on, so obviously he hasn't done his work yet for the day. And there are the people who are going into their office jobs because they've got their big mug of coffee
Hey, where's Scarf Lady?
Exactly.
She's usually right over there.
She just
wasn't her name Nancy? I could really relate to the beginning of that old Liam Neeson movie where he's on the commuter. I just didn't have a special set of skills. Wasn't it?
The Last Comic Shop was a 2022 Black Angus production.